Hello everybody, and with the release of Snow White, and by the way, it's just called Snow White, it's not called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or as I like to call it, forget what's been going on recently with this whole nonsense about try to attack Shakespeare by these so-called snowflakes. Like I said, I don't believe that story for one instance, and I'm just, because guess what, people will continue to study Shakespeare, whether anybody likes it or not, it will still continue because he was the very best, and there's no denying that. Meanwhile, let me get back on track. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or as I like to call it, how to actually try to attempt to rewrite history, is the, well, as you can imagine, it is Disney's latest, and that word actually makes me feel kind of sick, latest attempt to just bring the very first animated film ever made to the big screen, nearly 100 years after its initial release back in 1937, and, well, it is basically as it sounds. By the way, they're calling it Snow White and not Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs because apparently dwarves is now just a word you can't use whatsoever. But what about what's going to happen if if they do like a remake of Lord of the Rings? Like, how do you say seven to the vertically challenged lords? Like, what are you supposed to do right there? And in fact, for that matter, you may as well read it saying that 7 for the below average heighted lords, 3 to the vertically superior elf kings. Like, you know what I mean? But where is this stuff going to end? It's going to start getting ridiculous before anybody realizes what's going on. Anyway, now, ignoring the politics, ignoring the controversies, ignoring the very, very one-sided reviews to this, well, I'm just going to level with you guys. I saw the exact same thing 3 years ago when they were remaking Pinocchio and making it live action. And do you remember how everybody hated that movie? And everybody has decided to collectively forget about that movie and just go straight back to the 1940s original. You know, there's a very good... Guys, listen. There is a very good reason why that happens. But more than anything, I am going to explain to you guys very, very briefly why they are continuing to make these live-action movies. Sooner or later, they're going to do like live-action remakes of Toy Story. They're going to make it live-action involving human characters instead of... And bear in mind, Toy Story was the first fully-fledged CGI movie ever made. And it's turning 30 years old this year. And one of these days, they're going to make it live action. I wish it wasn't true, but this is the world we live in, guys. They are going to do that. Anyway, so where was I? They're going to, like I said, they're going to make Sleeping Beauty live action. They'll make Toy Story live action. They'll do a live action version of The Incredibles. They'll do a live action version of Ratatouille. They'll do a live action version of like Fantasia. You know, an anthology film that was specifically dedicated to animation set to classical music. They'll do one of that. I know they've already done a live action version of Dumbo, which I've not seen. They've done one of Aladdin, which I also have not seen. They also did one of like The Lion King, and they did a sequel to that as well, which I've definitely not seen. They'll do a live action one of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I'm not going to see. I mean, at this point, where do we start? Oliver and Company, which is literally just the story of Oliver Twist. They'll do one of that. What else? 101 Dalmatians. They'll do a live action version of that, even though we've already had at least 3 other versions of a live action version of 101 Dalmatians. Why that needs to be brought up again, I literally couldn't tell you. In fact, actually, isn't there already like a film basically called Cruella or DeVille or something like that? They'll do it because here's the reason why, guys. And it pains me to say this. They'll even do a live action version of Frozen and Moana. They'll even possibly try and do like a second attempt at Wish, but they'll just make it live action and change literally nothing about the script. And you know what? And they'll do like a Peter Pan. Well, technically they already have done a Peter Pan remake. You may not remember it, but it came out in 2000, like 2 years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if you completely forgot about it, because I certainly never even heard about it before I did this. They already did like Alice in Wonderland with like Tim Burton back in 2009. And I'm just going to straight up tell you guys right now, here's the reason why they are doing it. It's because it prints money. I literally can't think of any other reason whatsoever why Snow White, why these movies are not going to stop, because they will just continue to make money for Disney. That's legitimately that has got to be the only motive going forward. Because what other motive is there for doing a live action remake of a 1937 animated film that really was the very first of its kind? Whatever motive is there? Because I don't know if you've ever noticed, guys, but trying to adapt an 87-year-old movie is good. Because here's the thing, even the original film, I love Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It is for being the very first of its kind, and for what it actually did. It is literally, it stands as one of the perhaps the first great pillar of how we know Disney today. But the problem is, guys, is that I don't know if you've noticed, but Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it's not exactly the most story-heavy movie ever made. Let's think about it. For what it's worth, Snow White is declared the fairest of them all. She's fallen in love with a prince. The wicked queen wants her killed. She sends a hunter to go do it. So the hunter doesn't do it. Snow White runs to the woods, comes across a cabin where live 7 dwarfs who go out mining. They come back. They meet Snow White. They interact. They eat dinner. They dance together. Snow White is seen as a mother in front of the 7 dwarfs. They go back out. The Wicked Queen, disguised as an old woman, decides to poison Snow White herself. The Queen dies whilst being in pursuit of the dwarfs. A funeral is held. The prince comes along and wakens up Snow White with a kiss, and they both basically walk away into the sunset, or some sort of bizarro midsummer twist ending where they are actually going into the kingdom of heaven. Because at least in the original, it was pretty much showcased that Snow White was meant to be like Catholic. For whatever that's worth. Just saying. What I'm trying to say, guys, is that there's really not much else to the movie aside from that. I mean, if you think there's anything else the movie could... Is there anything else that you could really add to that movie, or add to that story that needs to be added, needs to be taken away? Are you telling me there's anything else that they could have done? Because bear in mind, even the original film was like 75 minutes, about like an hour and a quarter, something like that. And that's the other thing you need to bear in mind, guys, is that this is just under the 2025 one is just under 2 hours. And for me, for something like Snow White, that's about 30 minutes too long. Where are they going to get an extra 30 minutes? What else is there that this movie needs to add to justify for it being as... Unless the credits are literally 15 minutes long, I don't know what else you can get out of this. I really, really don't. And with all that being said and done, yeah, that's kind of where I am, because it's the same opinion I had about Pinocchio, The Little Mermaid. There's so many, and there's too many of us to count, and there's going to be too many more to count in the future. Walt's catchphrase, motto, if you will, was that, remember, Walt Disney was not a man who made movies to make money. He made money to make movies. This is literally Disney is literally just making movies to make money, because if it doesn't make a profit, then guess what? There's no reason to justify any of these things being made or remade again. But then again, maybe that's part of the reason why they are still doing it, because despite the fact that Disney has not won anything at the box office, well, at the Oscars, I should say, for nearly 3 years in a row now, across any of their projects, whether it be Star Wars, Marvel, like any of their animated stuff. Well, what else is there? Is that what is it going to take before like Disney actually like not just gets the message, but also realizes that this kind of is a kind of slap in the face to like Disney's philosophy, or even the renaissance they had in the 90s. They'll literally, one of these, if this goes on for like another 10 years, Disney in 2035 will be making a Brother Bear live action remake. That is literally that's as long as this will go on for, when they really will start running out of things to do. I mean, even in their lesser catalogue of films like Jungle Book, or, you know, I'm not even that big a fan of Tarzan either, but even they got the live action remake treatment and stuff like that. But yes, like I said again, Brother Bear, they won't ever do like a remake of things like, you know, the Black Cauldron or Atlas, or there's got to be some others as well. But to be honest, I think I've made my point. Oh, it's a tragic and it's a very sad state of affairs, guys. But if I'm being honest, I'm gonna maybe I should put a bet on that 2035 they'll do a Brother Bear remake, because, well, we've tried everything else. They'll do 2 more remakes of Alice in Wonderland before we get anywhere close to an Atlas remake. I mean, and also, but the majority of other things to bear in mind is that the majority of these things that they're bothering to make it live action, they're not even good when you think when you not because when you compare them to the originals they were based off, but it's because they just follow the beats note for note. Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast. They just can you really try and tell me that there's anything that those movies actually do anywhere near differently from the originals that makes them in any way better films? Or just, why not just put the original Beauty and the Beast and put it back on the big screen? But then again, I'm not going to pretend that I don't work for Disney's marketing or anything like that, or, you know. But what else am I meant to say at this point? It's just kind of embarrassing now.